Hello. So it's been a really long time since my last video. I was still in hospital. It was 26 weeks when I made that last video. The boys are now nearly 5 months old since that last video. So it's been a very long time, and as you can imagine, it's been quite busy. So after my last video, I lasted until 29 weeks and 5, that's when I gave birth to the twins. So prior to that, they were born on the Saturday, and from the Wednesday I was having contractions or pains. And then Saturday morning I should say, my waters broke. So Tom, who was the twin that was head down, had broke my waters. And so what had happened is that they'd broken, and they did a test where if you swab, it turns a colour, and the swab was positive, but they also do a slide. The slide was negative. And so they didn't then believe I was actually in labour, even though I knew I was. And then again, I woke up after a bit of a nap about 4 o'clock in the morning, and I was soaked. And so at that stage they did another exam and found, yes, waters had broken, and so labour had started. Even though a labour at 30 weeks then a full term is quite different. You feel a lot of different contractions and tightenings are quite different, so it wouldn't be considered like a normal labour if you were at full term. So that's why the pains I was having were very much painful, but weren't the classic labour pains. And so Barry actually was going to stay that night because he thought it would happen, but I told him to go home, and obviously he went home and had to come back early the next morning because boys will be going to be born. And so there was a decision to be made whether they would be born by C-section or a normal vaginal birth. And at that stage, I just didn't really care. I didn't really have a preference. I just wanted them to be safe and to come out. And so we went up to labour that morning, and it was quite hilarious because we had to move all of my stuff from antenatal up until labour, which was ridiculous because after 8 weeks staying in a ward, you tend to move yourself in, and there was a lot of stuff that we had to quickly move from ward to ward. And so Barry was busy doing that while I was getting monitored and all that kind of stuff. And so I'm very blessed that Dr. Chris Saxton was on that day, and he's quite experienced in twin births, and he has twins in himself, and so he was consulting at Women's and Children's that day. So we're very blessed to have such an experienced consultant. And so his choice was for section because it was just going to be safer, especially because Charlie was breech, and it just would have been a lot. And obviously I'd been through a lot, and it was probably less stress, and obviously my first birth wasn't the most positive experience, so section was decided. And so around 11 o'clock that morning, we prepped for section. It was actually really quite a positive experience. I was quite positive during it because we were pretty close to 30 weeks, and so I was pretty happy to where we'd gotten with them. And we had steroids, and we had magnesium, which helps with their brain development and their lungs. So I was really happy we got to that point, and I actually went that far. And so the only thing about this section was the getting the needle of the epidural or the spinal tap, which was quite painful. What they were doing, they'd put the local in first, so you would actually feel the big needle, but they didn't wait long enough for the local to actually work, and so they stuck the needle straight into my spine, and that was quite painful. And so it took quite a few tries to get it, and there was a moment where I'm like, no, we need to stop, this is a bit much for me. And so then the senior anaesthetist took over and got a first shot, and that was good. And it's an amazing feeling, having no control of your body. Like you cannot move any part of your body. So basically from my chest down, I didn't feel a thing. I could not feel them moving, undressing me, cutting me, I couldn't feel anything. And it was just the most weirdest sensation I've ever experienced. It was actually quite funny. Labour itself didn't take too long. Basically I was like, are they started? Next minute we have a baby, and Tom was born at 11:41 a.m. And then Charlie took a bit longer to get. It took an extra couple minutes to get out because he was right up under my ribs. And so Tori, the other doctor, got him out. And there's quite a few funny photos of Chris and Tori holding Charlie. They're quite proud. And so then he was born at 11:43. and then and obviously and I got to see them quite briefly, and they were taken away to the neonatal unit, and then Barry followed to make any decisions that we needed to make at that time. And so I was then left obviously to get stitched up, and so then I was taken through to the NICU, and I got to see them, and I got to just touch them through the human cribs, and it was quite lovely just to see them. And you know, not to get that skin to skin in the first couple of hours, obviously, is what every mother wants, but you know, at that time, that was what they needed. And so that night, then obviously, I was spent in recovery. The funny thing is, when I went on to the postnatal ward, is that Deb, who is one of the reps for the multiple groups in South Australia, was a midwife on that day, and I was wondering if I would get her, and I did. And so it just seems to be, you know, really just, you know, fate kind of just kicked in, and she was quite lovely and gave some really good advice. And so it was really nice to have a face that I knew looking after me after I gave birth. And that's when obviously the journey started of the NICU and the special care, which I'll do in another video. But basically, I just want to talk about the recovery of the C-section. I went to recovery straight after, and obviously you're naked, and you know, you've just been cut open, and you got this wound. And I was lucky, I had what we call a suction wound, so I had a suction dressing over my wound, which provides that, you know, obviously to keep the skin closed so it wouldn't open. And that was on for 7 days, and I was quite lucky. My wound, you know, healed beautifully. There was no issues. I vomited when I got to postnatal because I had too much water, and I wasn't supposed to drink too much water in recovery, and so I vomited literally all over the room, and poor Deb had to clean it up. And then obviously when in recovery they push on your tummy to get, you know, and obviously having twins, it's a lot more fluid and placentas and that to get out. So I remember them and I could see them, but I could actually feel it. So just pushing and getting all the extra fluid out of me, and, you know, monitoring me, you know, all that kind of stuff. And I was in recovery for about 2 hours, and then obviously went to the ward. You can't move for a good 5 hours, can't get any feeling. I didn't actually get up that entire day or the entire night until the next morning, where I got up and was encouraged to get up and walk around, and that's the hardest. The first getting up is the hardest, because obviously you just had major surgery, so it's really quite hard to move around. The first couple of days were very painful, but I guess my motivation was getting down to the NICU and having that skin to skin with my boy. So thinking of it, I was actually probably more inclined to get up and walk around. So, you know, the wheelchair was taken away after the first day, and I was, you know, told to walk and get up. And so, you know, after the first week, I was fine. It was just the initial first week where you know, obviously getting over that, and it was, you know, obviously, you know, keep up with pain relief, and, you know, really listen to the doctors about, you know, taking it at the right time and actually keep it constant. And so after the first week, I was fine. So I'm just going to do another video about the actual NICU experience, and we'll go from there. Okay.